You know, there are certain names that always come to mind when you think about growing the arts in Kansas City. Kemper, Block, Hall, Helzberg.
And to that list, we should be adding Belger.
Well, you know, it's a name you've probably seen attached to cranes or large trucks. Their cartage company has been around since 1919.
But what began with an art gallery in the company headquarters has spawned the Red Star Ceramic Studio and now another amazing complex called the Crane Yard Studio.
What Dick and Evelyn Kraft Belger are quietly building here is definitely worth further examination.
Boston, Massachusetts, Melbourne, Australia, Phoenix, Arizona, Tijuana, Mexico, Austin, Texas, Greenville, South Carolina, and on and on. Yeah, the way I remember it was Dick said, I've been going to museums for 30 years, and half the time I get in my car and I think, what the was that all about? He said, all I want you to do is hang out and talk to people. And then we have this mysterious three-dimensional bot and explain to them why I collect what I collect and why we do the shows we do. And I have found that's been a pretty successful formula.
10 years have passed now since Mo Dickens took the reins of the gallery started by the late Myra Morgan a few years earlier. Myra also gets credit for starting Dick Belger on his art collecting odyssey a few decades before that. Turns out he'd already had some practice.
I think I've collected about everything except bottle caps and baseball cards. If you collect, you're learning. If you're learning, you're still alive. If you're not learning, you're dead.
For a guy who claims he could barely spell art when he started, Dick caught on quickly, amassing works by top-flight contemporary artists like William Wiley, Jasper Johns, Robert Stackhouse, and William Christenberry, among others. Works which soon began finding their way onto walls in the company headquarters.
I have a real curiosity, and I discovered later I'm a fan of process. You know, how do you get from here to there? What happens in that? And that's what those artists are doing. They're processing. They're going through a process to do that work. And they're resolving some of their own issues, some of their personal issues. And that's really what got me hooked in art.
Need to get it up to get
The Belger collection runs so deep on certain artists that Mo and his staff frequently field calls from high-profile museums around the country putting together exhibitions of their own. In fact, Evelyn Kraft Belger met her future husband while serving as executive director of the Arts Center in St. Petersburg, Florida. They've been married 6 years now.
I respect and love the collection, and I love Dick's collecting vision. I would probably buy things in an undisciplined manner because I love them. I love seeing people try new things, develop new skills, and hopefully grow as an artist.
So far, Evelyn's biggest impact, aside from helping Dick dial down his work week to just 6 days, can be found a few blocks further east. Across the railroad tracks from the real Crane Yard, the Belger Crane Yard Studios at 20th and Tracy contain a little bit of everything. An exhibition space, a new home for Red Star Ceramics, the Lawrence Lithography Workshop, and the metal shop where Ashir Akram built his acclaimed Pakistani cargo truck.
And I believe it's really important to provide an opportunity to as many people as possible to experience the creative process. If you're in a museum environment, you have so many other restrictions. When you are in an art center environment like ours, which is a private gallery, we can take a lot more chances because what we're doing is trying to educate about the creative process, and that includes mistakes and it includes opportunities for people to soar, that they wouldn't have had before.
When I still had the shop in Lawrence, some of the artists that he was collecting, like Stackhouse and Wiley and those guys, they were sending over to me to print with. And he wanted the idea of a shop here in this area instead of just on the east or west coast.
After spending some time in Texas, Mike Sims brought his printmaking prowess back to town. In 2001, Lawrence Lithography became the first and, for many years, only occupant of this formidable old building that once housed a wax paper plant.
I like, personally, that we're not right down in the Crossroads district. I like that this has its own little niche. The view out these windows every single day is stimulating, and the weather changes. The show out the window is great. Now the Red Star is downstairs and with the metal shop. All of this is now becoming an arts destination point, so we're all feeding off each other this way. We're getting a critical mass here that's really bringing people out.
There are facilities that strive to do similar things in town, like there's the Hobbs building and there was the Arts Incubator. But I think the way they're approaching setting everything up and letting it kind of organically define itself is unique here, and it's working really well.
Nothing as ambitious as the cargo truck has passed through here lately, but plenty of metal fabrication continues. In fact, Ashir showed some large-scale pieces upstairs last winter. And in the spirit of things, he's also been playing more frequently with ceramics. Which brings us to Craneyard Clay, a wholesale operation housed in the east end of the complex. Selling art supplies for pottery making has deepened the revenue stream here, and that's by design.
My background is in business first, and then it was the arts. And even though it was the business side of the arts later on, I think you've got to have both elements. It can't be all wishful thinking. There's a lot of hard work into any career in the arts.
And that creative process not only works in the arts, it also works in the business, because you have to be quick on your feet and be able to adapt to new ways of thinking in the business world to be successful. And that's one good influence that the arts have on me, is my feet aren't quite planted so deep in cement. You know, I can move a little bit quicker.
As unusual as this mix might seem, consider this. The heavy hauling industry moves things from point A to point B, not unlike the artistic process that Dick Belger finds so fascinating.
I think his biggest contribution to the city, and he makes a whole lot of incredible contributions to the city, but is the backing he gives the arts at the ground level, building up.
I won't say we're reclusive, but we're pretty private people. The only reason to put our name on anything is to say that it's important that everybody give. Whatever level that you can do something that opens another person's eyes to the arts or creative process, that's really important.
So this is very early, and this is kind of funny to me because I found students from the Art Institute frequently come down here and they say, "How do I get a job like yours, Mo?" And I learned pretty early on the correct answer was, "I don't think there is a job like mine. If I ever hear of one, I'll let you know." Come here, I got to show you the way Peregrine signed this thing. New Year's Day, 2001.